I'm here with Laura Timbrook of Manufacturing Wellness and Outspoken Nutrition podcasts to talk about productivity and workplace wellness within the manufacturing industry. Laura?
Hi, Tara. Thanks so much for having me. I am a national board certified health and wellness coach. I am a well-being strategist for the manufacturing industry, and I also run 2 weekly podcasts. The first one is Manufacturing Wellness, and that is really a podcast that's dedicated to wellness within the manufacturing industry. And I also run Outspoken Nutrition, that is a podcast that's just basic, all your health and wellness advice, simple and straightforward.
Thank you for reminding our previous viewers and introducing yourself to new viewers. Can you give us some background on how wellness can improve productivity in the manufacturing industry workplace?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times we don't think of well-being and wellness and how it affects our productivity directly, but it's pretty amazing how much of our productivity is directly affected by what we are eating, how we are sleeping, and what we are doing. So this year, there was a really interesting book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I started reading the book, and it's some really interesting research that has shown that for anybody that sleeps 6 hours a day, so if you were to sleep 6 hours a day for 11 days, your productivity is that of someone that hasn't slept for 24 hours. And that's pretty amazing because can you imagine somebody being on your facility floor that hasn't slept in 24 hours? I mean, the safety concerns that would come along with that. But yet, how many of our manufacturing workforce, or just in society in general, is only getting 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep? You know, it's recommended 6 to 8, but really what a lot of their research is showing, it really needs to be 8+ hours. So when we're only sleeping for 4 hours a night, it only takes 6 nights to be comparable to someone that hasn't slept for 24 hours. And the worst part is when we look at these sleep studies, the numbers never level off. They keep declining. So if you have been sleeping for 4 hours for, weeks on end, you're now on 48 or 36 hours of no sleep on a productivity line. So that's really scary when we start talking about that, and that's just one area of well-being. When I talk about my core principles of well-being, I have my foundationals, which is sleep and nourishment obviously being food and water. We have our sleep, we have our movement, we have our relationships, and we have our purpose. And all of these are within our well-being principles. So that sleep is just one portion. So then we look at the nutrition and the nourishment side. We already know nutrition really affects performance. Sports nutritionists have really proven that. I mean, just nutrient timing. So that is when an athlete eats certain foods based on their activity. In nutrient timing, that actually affects 10% of their performance. And that's just the timing of perfect nutrients. So for some of us that are eating diets that are less than what we really should be eating, how much that really affects us overall. One of the biggest things I hear when people get on diets is everything's so much clearer. I feel lighter. I can think so much quicker. I have more response and a ton of energy. And that's just within a couple days of cleaning up their diets, and not anything even really strict. A lot of times I'm recommending to people just to be adding in vegetables. So, just how much of that is really affected is really amazing. I mean, hydration. There was a study that showed 1% of a decrease in hydration affects our productivity level at 12%. So we can see how simple things of drinking water, eating our vegetables, and getting some sleep can drastically affect our productivity.
Definitely have to address Maslow's hierarchy of needs to ensure you have the foundation to be working at your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also forget about the other side of that too. And that's our relationships and our purpose. So
Hmm.
many accidents are caused by distraction. We have all kinds of statistics that say how many of our workplace, especially within manufacturing and an industrial um, sector, how much of that is accidents are by distraction from a cell phone. So we have protocols in place to help reduce those distractions. But think about how much distractions are coming from maybe just being hungry, or I skipped breakfast, or I didn't get to sleep at night, or maybe, all of that adds to those distractions. So we really want to make sure that when we are on the floor or we're walking into our office or a facility, that we are really at the best we can be. Now, of course, we can't control every aspects of life. Things still aren't going to go our way, but if we can balance the weight a little bit to make sure that the things we can control, like sleeping and nutrition and making sure we're getting in proper movement, we can control some of it. Movement, a lot of times we overlook, and we forget how much movement really plays a role in healthy joints and making sure those joints are lubricated so that we're not having workplace injuries, or getting arthritis, or shoulder pain. We see that so much in the manufacturing industry, especially with those repetitive motions.
Right. Ergonomics is a big component of that too. If you're doing repetitive movements, you want to protect your employees from injury.
Absolutely. And I really like the idea of micro breaks. So we know in the manufacturing industry, we usually get our 30-minute lunch and we get our 15-minute breaks. But I like the idea of adding in these micro breaks as needed. Think about if you're working on an assembly line and your back starts really cramping up. You're now again distracted. You are now not the safest employee. So if we could take a few, maybe 2 minutes, and just come away for a moment and stretch our back, do some stretches. That way we can get back on the floor and perform better, and we're not worried about something cramping up and then maybe even, getting a back issue from that, and it's affecting our work the following day. So I really like that idea of micro breaks, of just stepping away. And even if it's in that issue where, let's say you got something running through your mind, step back a moment, clear it out, and then come back, so where you're fully focused.
A lot of the time, owners want to have their employees work straight through because they believe it leads to productivity. But if you give employees more breaks, they get the opportunity to stretch and to recenter on the task at hand, which is how you really improve productivity.
Absolutely. And there's been research that is being really done to shown how much of that, stepping away for a moment actually doesn't affect productivity at all. There was actually, right before we came on this call, I was actually reading another study that actually showed that there was some productivity issues and with machine maintenance. And they found if they took the machines offline more often and maintained them, it actually increased their productivity, even though, quote unquote, they were working less, just because of the maintenance on machinery. So imagine if you were maintaining our bodies in the same manner, we would probably have the same results.
You said movement is a big component of wellness. What are some tips you can give for different depending on different operating conditions?
So everyone is a little bit different, and of course, depending on how we're moving. But one of the things I like, it's simply just going for a walk. Just being able to walk. I mean, walking does so much with just even lowering our cortisol, with getting our blood pumping and moving. A lot of times there, it's funny because we get very confused on the difference between standing and moving. So often I hear people tell me that I don't sit down all day. Well, you might not sit down all day, but you're also not moving all day. It's the repetitive, maybe arm movements or lifting, but you're not actually getting that movement in. So on the simplest level, walking is the best. Now, if you're doing a lot of shoulder work, you want to stretch out those shoulders. You want to just simply get up and maybe, lift your arms up or stretch them in a way that you haven't been moving them. You know, Another great one is if you're standing, especially if you're standing, in a static area, being able to lift your knees up and do kind of like a knee lift or your butt kicks, something like that, just to get the blood and movements moving. That's so important because, you know, not only are we looking at it from the importance of, you know, a movement level and joint health and muscle retention, but we are also looking at it from, you know, just the well-being perspective of being able to move and not feeling so, you know, tied up. It makes us feel, you know, you have that release. You have that release both in your muscles and your tension, but also in your mind. So, you know, my biggest thing is if you can get out and walk. I love if people have the ability to get out and walk. And I know a lot of times in manufacturing facilities, that's pretty easy because you're walking from facility to facility, and a lot of times it's outside. So even a few minute walk can really change your mindset, your feelings, how you're moving. It's a really good, simple solution. Of course, then if someone can bring in, you know, a specialist, maybe an occupational therapist or a physical therapist or a fitness trainer, and give specific exercises that each, you know, employee can do for their specific jobs or for their specific tasks. That's like the best case scenario of having that. I don't know if you guys have a Wegmans out in the West Coast, but they had all their employees outside doing stretches before they started their shifts. I thought that was pretty cool.
And it's a good opportunity to build company morale, to have everyone take a break together and stretch, or some similar movement activity.
Absolutely. You create that sense of community that you're kind of all in it together. And it does, you know, and it's funny because how often would you hear employees saying, you know, if they saw, you know, one of their employees like moving their shoulders, oh, did you do your shoulder stretches today? It adds that accountability support. So we want our employees healthy.
I know some manufacturers have campus circuit training walking trails, and I know not all companies can do that, but they can create simple activities that integrate wellness into their company's culture.
And you said it perfectly. You said culture. And that's exactly what we want to build in these facilities. We want a sense of wellness culture, that wellness is a top priority because not only is it going to make your employees feel valued, and that's really what we want. I mean, that's a huge benefit of employee retention is when an employee feels valued. So if an employee feels that you're valuing their wellness, they're more likely to stay with you, and you keep your employees around longer, less workman comps. You know, there's so many benefits, but I love what you said too about, you know, having those facilities or walking trails. I see more and more places putting in those walking trails again. And what I really like is, I don't know if you guys had them on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, a lot of our like state parks used to have little fitness cards up. So they would have like a log and they would say like 5 push-ups off the log. And if we could do something simple like that on those walking trails, just getting people moving. If any of you are familiar with blue zone research, and it's actually blue zones are pockets around the world. They're healthier population and they're living longer. Movement always plays a big role in that blue zone research. So it's really interesting. Hell, I just saw a picture of Jane Fonda recently on Facebook or Instagram, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I wish I did those aerobic videos that long ago.
Movement is key to long-term health, but obviously so is nutrition. Do you have suggestions to manufacturing companies on how they can provide nutritious options for their employees?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things is we need to make sure that our lunch breaks are being given to where they can actually have a physical lunch break. You know, I recently worked at a facility where their 30-minute lunch break was almost, it was very hard for somebody to have actual lunch during that 30 minutes because by the time they would walk across the facility and get to the lunchroom and use the restroom and heat up their lunch, they really only realistically maybe had 3 or 4 minutes of lunch. And that's not long enough to eat a lunch. So we want to make sure that our lunch breaks are to where our employees can actually eat lunch. It's also really important that, you know, during breaks, our employees have access to healthier snacks. So simple solution on this is talk to your vending machine um, vendor and find out, keep the most common eaten snacks. So if you know your facility is a big Snickers bar facility, do not take the Snickers bars out of the facilities. You're just going to have a bunch of angry employees. But what we can do is maybe add in some almonds or some low salted pretzels, other options that would be healthier. So again, we're giving them the option to make healthier choices. And then of course, health fairs are a great idea. Nutrition or health coach consulting, group coaching for maybe weight loss or some specific issues is a good idea. But really just advocating eating lunch and having healthier options for our employees are a great way to start. And when we start, not feeding our bodies properly, that's when we start bringing in our, type 2 diabetes, our heart disease, all of this stuff. And, we know from research that type 2 diabetes with diet and exercise is reversible. And yet these are some of the most common, not only in the manufacturing industry, but in the entire US. We are dealing with the rise of diabetes and even amongst children now. So it's something that if we can fix it so simply by, diet and exercise, it's really something that on, an organizational end, we really need to help advocate and support healthier choices because it's really going to affect our workforce. And, talking about our workforce, we know we are in an area right now where our workforce within manufacturing is aging out. We're not bringing in the younger generation like we should be. And we can potentially be in a really critical area in the next few years. But we know the secret to the millennials. They value family, wellness, and purpose. Now, I think there's a huge purpose in the manufacturing industry. I mean, COVID has proven it. I mean, we had, facilities making sports uniforms turning over and making PPE. Hey, my local distillery was making hand sanitizer for hospitals. I mean, there is a huge, purpose in these manufacturing industries that we can pivot on a dime and really help communities. So there's a large purpose in there. And if we can bring in well-being, it would be attractive to the millennial generation. So that's really what we want. We want to bring in those younger generations, and wellness is key. I mean, when I was, 30 years old, I was not spending, $150 on a gym membership. But yet someone 30 years old is going to spend $150 on a gym membership. It's important to them. So we have to acknowledge that and we have to support it. And, a lot of our millennial generation has seen our parents' health decline, and they don't want to be in that situation where their health is declining in their 60s. They want to remain healthier for longer. So if they can find an organization that's going to support them and their well-being, that's more attractive to them, and we can attract that younger generation.
It is important for manufacturers to address that social and cultural shift to meet their skills gap, and it will definitely help attract younger generations to the industry.
Yeah. And, I do think it is going to change. I'm a big proponent in trade schools. And I do think now that, kids are starting to take a little bit of a look. I think a lot of times having that media out there and showing what the manufacturing workforce did, it was impressive. It made you feel like you wanted to be a part of that, because you made a great point with the society shift. That was showing manufacturers caring about their society, about their community. And we know that younger generation, that's another big portion for them.
There's been a lot of push for the college track over trade schools, and in my personal opinion, not everyone is made for that specific educational route. The next generation needs to be informed of their other options. And I think trade schools are a big deal.
Just reading actually, there was a Facebook group about parents, and one parent was really upset that their son was looking at a trade school instead of a college. And of course, a bunch of us jumped in. We're like, why are you upset? No, this is like, I keep joking that trade school is going to be the next Ivy Leagues, because I really feel that we're going to make a shift closer to trades. And somebody came on that has worked a lifetime in trades, and he said, but you know what? He goes, there's something to be said about not having the pain from years of doing the same labor over and over again. And he was talking about the physicalities of a job. But yet, if we could take those physicalities and reverse them and help support healthier, we can so much more attract that younger generation saying, come over to us. We're going to help you out. We're going to keep you safe. We're going to keep you healthy. OSHA's doing their parts, and they keep, getting better. And organizations, I see more and more manufacturing facilities, really advocating how long they've been accident free, which is great. We've seen so many facilities become smoke free. That's another great. So we're making these strides. And I really feel that, the manufacturing industry can really be on the cusp of employee wellness and well-being. I saw, the rise of corporate wellness really over the last 8 years working in corporate. And I know that the manufacturing can do the same because I've seen them starting to implement it. We just now, we focus on the safety protocols, and we're focusing on productivity. But now we need to start focusing on employee wellness. And one of the best ways to do that is starting to implement that wellness culture and starting to, just include whether it's health fairs or, new vending machine options. And then we can address leadership by making sure we're leading more of a empathetic leadership role where we're taking account into our workforce and how they're feeling. And, one of the biggest things is, I wrote an article recently. It was always a sign of your best workers when you never took a day off. I remember hearing, managers say, oh, so-and-so is my best worker. They haven't had a day off in 2 years. That's not a good thing, because we need that time to rest, relax, rejuvenate. So we want to make sure that our leadership is sharing our message on our employee wellness and not promoting unhealthy habits, because that's a big thing. We don't want leadership supporting unhealthy habits. We want our leadership supporting healthier habits. Having that flexibility to change things as we're going. And, you want to make sure, your customers are happy, but your employees are your number one customers. They're the ones that are talking about you when you're not listening. So you want to know what they're saying. And, if you're supporting them, if you're appreciating them, if they feel like they're valued, they're going to be your biggest asset going forward. And a lot of times it's just little tweaks. A lot of times, I think a lot of times we think of wellness culture that it has to be, implementing a facility gym or offering these big, fitness and wellness packages. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's can be as simple as on the manufacturing wellness podcast. I guess it was last month, I interviewed Lisa Ryan, who she is a gratitude speaker for the manufacturing industry. And she just talked about how much showing appreciation to your employees really made a difference in their overall day. And I even think back at it, you think about you're walking into a store and someone compliments you and says, hey, nice shirt, nice boots. It makes you stand a little taller, you smile a little more. So if we can do that on a daily basis, the changes in our mental health is so important. You know, in corporate wellness, we talk a lot a bit on mindfulness. And I remember I was talking one time with a facility and the guy looked at me, he goes, I am not into pillows and twinkle lights. And it was funny because, you know, he's so right. When we think of mindfulness, we think of, you know, the yoga person sitting in a room with some twinkle lights and nice relaxing music. But what we don't realize is a lot of what we do on a daily basis can be used as mindfulness. You know, think about right now we're in hunting season. So think about sitting out in a hunting stand. You know, you spend a lot of time really quiet in the woods. Well, that is the perfect moment for mindfulness. You're listening to the trees, the different smells in the air, the sounds you hear in the distance. That is all quieting our minds and becoming present to what's all around us. You know, we do the same thing when we fish, or if we go for a ride on our motorcycle or maybe a car. You know, turning that radio off and just listening to the sounds of the motor or the hum of the tires on the road and nature. We're being present in that moment, and that's really what we want. There's so much that what we do on a daily basis can be turned into healthier choices throughout the day. And that's really what we want to focus on. So it's not about the fancy gyms and the fancy benefits. Sometimes it's about having the acknowledgement of what we do already, can be used on a healthier approach. And that's one of the ways I approach most of our leadership training is we're looking at what we're currently doing and how we can do it a little bit better. And those small incremental changes make it sustainable. And that's really what we want. We don't want to I have seen so many health and wellness programs create more stress. That is not what we want to do. We want our health and wellness program to reduce our stress, to make us feel more in harmony with how we are fluctuating throughout the day. So small incremental changes is a sustainable approach, and it's going to keep going, and it'll make it so much easier than this big undertaking.
Thank you for joining me today, Laura. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I love this opportunity to come and talk. I know for manufacturing, kind of implementing wellness is new. You know, it's not really been focused on. So I think it's a topic that we need to talk about because our workforce is worth it. And it's one of the reasons why I started the Manufacturing Wellness Podcast, because I want, you know, people within the industry to see what others are doing and how we are supporting it. We have great organizations like, you know, what you guys are doing at West Coast Industry Solutions in the magazine. And, you know, there's other organizations like Women in Manufacturing. So there's so many of these great organizations that I keep hoping to highlight. So if anybody knows of other organizations, if they can contact me at lauratimbrook.com, that would be great. And if you don't mind me plugging, there is an employee retention summit coming up specifically for the manufacturing industry. So I'm actually going to be doing a talk on wellness and why employees stay. If you visit employeeretentionsummit.com, you can sign up and register all over there. There's some amazing speakers coming in because it's all about the manufacturing industry. I really hope 2021 becomes very strong for the manufacturing industry. So I really thank you for everything you guys are doing for the industry, manufacturing, agricultural. It's so important for everything out there.
And if our listeners and viewers wanted to get in contact with you, how would they reach you?
They can find me basically on any podcast platform. I am on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon. You can even say to Alexa, play Outspoken Nutrition, and I will pop up. Thank you so much, Tara. Thank you for having me.